Hello everyone, welcome to Boss Economic World. I am your host, keeping an eye on your wallet so the government doesn't have to. Today is November 24th, 2025. If you look out the window in London, it's probably raining. If you look at the London Stock Exchange, it's definitely pouring. We are standing on the precipice of a major economic event. This Wednesday, the UK Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves, will stand up in Parliament to deliver her second budget. The mood in the City of London? Let's just say funeral directors are currently the most optimistic demographic in the country. Economists, specifically the ones employed by the state, love to tell you that the economy is a machine. They think it's a car engine. You turn a screw here, raise a tax, you pour in some oil there, increase spending, and the machine hums along perfectly. They have sophisticated models, massive Excel spreadsheets, and beautiful charts that predict exactly how a £3 trillion economy, that's $4 trillion for our American friends, will react to policy changes. But here is the truth they won't tell you: the economy isn't a machine. It is a biological ecosystem. It is millions of people making individual choices based on fear, hope, and incentives. And when you start poking a living organism with a sharp stick, it doesn't just sit there and let you extract resources. It moves. It fights back. Or, as we are seeing now, it simply leaves the room. Rachel Reeves is a habitual tinkerer. She believes she can outsmart the market. But today, we are going to analyze why her technocratic self-confidence is about to crash headfirst into the brick wall of reality. We are going to look at why the smartest guys in the room are making mistakes that even a first-year econ student would spot, and why the price for these mistakes won't be paid by the billionaires they are targeting, but by the young barista serving you coffee tomorrow morning. Let's restore the full picture. Let's start with the science. The British Treasury uses what we call static scoring in many of their econometric tools. These models assume that if you tax an activity, people will continue doing that activity at the exact same rate, just paying more for the privilege. Imagine you run a toll bridge. It costs £1 to cross. 1,000 cars cross daily. Revenue, £1,000. You need more money, so the Treasury model says, make the toll £100. The model calculates, 1,000 cars times £100 equals £100,000. Fantastic. Problem solved. But in reality? 999 cars turn around and take the scenic route. You make £100 from the one guy who didn't check his GPS. This Wednesday, Reeves is going to lay out a raft of revenue increases tested by these very tools. She is looking for cash to plug the holes in the UK finances. But she is ignoring the first law of economic thermodynamics: action and reaction. Reeves was actually on the right track a few weeks ago. She was signaling loudly that she wanted to raise income tax. Now, politically, that's suicide. It breaks a manifesto promise not to tax working people, a term that is becoming increasingly impossible to define. But economically? It's honest. It's transparent. If you raise my income tax by 2%, I might grumble. I might skip a few fancy dinners. But I understand it. It's simple. I wake up, I go to work, I pay the tax. The distortion is minimal. But Reeves and Prime Minister Keir Starmer don't have the political capital to do the honest thing. Their own labor lawmakers are mutinous. So, instead of a clean hit, we are about to get death by 1,000 cuts. We are likely to see a smorgasbord of complex, fiddly measures. We're talking about extra property charges, obscure changes to pension relief, and get this, applying value-added tax, VAT, to Uber fares. Why does this matter? Because complexity is a tax in itself. When you create a Byzantine tax code, you aren't just taking money, you are taking time. You are taking bandwidth. The danger of this lack of clarity is that it acts as a massive brake on economic activity. If I don't know what the tax rules will be next year, I don't invest today. If I have to hire 3 accountants just to figure out if I can afford to buy a new delivery van, I just won't buy the van. This is the opposite of what a government promised to deliver growth should be doing. Now, let's talk about the favorite phrase of this government: those with the broadest shoulders. It's a euphemism. It sounds noble, doesn't it? It conjures up images of Atlas holding up the sky. In Labor's dictionary, broadest shoulders means anyone doing well. Anyone who has built a business, saved for retirement, or invested wisely. The political logic is simple: there are more poor voters than rich voters. So, squeeze the rich to pay for the poor. Robin Hood politics. But here is the economic reality: the people with the broadest shoulders also have the fastest legs. Wealthy individuals and corporations have what we economists call high elasticity. They have options. They have economic flexibility. If you are a low-income worker, you are often tied to your location. If you are a global investor or a high-net-worth entrepreneur, you are a citizen of the world. Let's look at the data from the Office for National Statistics, ONS. Net emigration from the UK last year, 2024, was much higher than predicted. Who is leaving? It's not just retirees seeking sun in Spain. It is the non-doms, non-domiciled residents. These are ultra-wealthy individuals who live in the UK but pay tax on their overseas income only if they bring it into the country. Reeves decided to scrap this status. She also threatened to subject their entire global wealth to British inheritance tax at 40%. Now, in an era of food banks, nobody cries for a billionaire. I get that. But put your emotions aside and look at the math. When a wealthy non-dom leaves London for Dubai, Monaco, or Singapore, what happens? The UK doesn't just lose the new inheritance tax revenue they hoped to get. They lose the income tax that person was already paying. They lose the stamp duty on the £20 million house they sell. They lose the VAT on the luxury cars, the dinners, and the services they bought. It is a net negative. You are chasing pennies and losing pounds. Let's look at history. We don't have to guess what happens, we can just look across the channel at France. In 2012, French President François Hollande, a socialist, announced a 75% supertax on incomes above €1 million, $1.15 million. It was wildly popular with his base. Make the rich pay. The result? Disaster. Investors fled. Football stars left. CEOs moved headquarters. The revenue raised was meager, pathetic, really. But the damage to France's reputation was massive. Investors looked at France and said, this place is hostile to success. Even worse, in 2017, President Emmanuel Macron had to abandon France's wealth tax, ISF, because it caused an exodus of capital. At least 10,000 millionaires left the country. Éric Pichet, a brilliant French economist, crunched the numbers. He estimated that the fiscal loss from these immigrants leaving, the VAT, income tax, and other duties they took with them was twice the amount the wealth tax actually raised. Think about that. For every €1 the government collected from the rich, they lost €2 in total revenue. That is the definition of bad economics. And yet, Rachel Reeves seems intent on copying France's homework, unaware that France got an F on the assignment. So, if the rich leave, who pays the price? This is the most important part of today's analysis. When you throttle capital, you cut off the air supply to labor. All taxes, however meticulously calibrated by those Treasury models, tend to slow economic activity. And when the economy slows, it is the least financially resilient who suffer first. Let's go back to that French example. In 2012, when Hollande introduced that 75% tax, France's chronic youth unemployment had just started to ease. It was getting better. But later that same year, after the tax shock, youth unemployment surged to more than 25%. A quarter of young people out of work. Why? Because the rich people who left were the ones starting businesses, investing in startups, and hiring staff. When the broad shoulders shrug, the people standing on them fall off. This is already happening in the UK. In Reeves' last budget, her maiden voyage, she decided to whack employers. She increased national insurance, a tax on jobs, lowered the threshold so more businesses had to pay it, and mandated a substantial lift in the living wage. She thought, business has broad shoulders, they can take it. Well, let's look at the scorecard for 2025. The losers were predominantly young people. Despite forming roughly 10% of the working population, under 25s have accounted for almost half of the 177,000 UK jobs lost since June 2024. Let that sink in. 177,000 jobs gone. Half of them belong to young people trying to get their foot on the ladder. Why? Because when you make it expensive to hire people, businesses stop hiring. They automate. They outsource. Or they just close. The local pub, faced with higher taxes and higher mandated wages, doesn't fire the experienced manager. They fire the 19-year-old barback. They stop hiring the apprentice. The unintended consequence is that a policy designed to help the working class has destroyed the entry-level jobs that the working class relies on. And having learned nothing, Reeves is expected this week to widen the net of VAT to haul in smaller businesses. She's going after the plumbers, the electricians, the consultants. Maybe the tradespeople should move to Dubai too? Though I hear the plumbing is already quite good there. There is a concept in politics called kitchen sinking. When a new government comes in, the rule is, do all the bad stuff immediately. Throw everything, including the kitchen sink, at the voters in your first budget. Blame the previous government, the previous lot. Say, oh my God, the finances are worse than we thought. We have to raise taxes. You do it once. You rip off the band-aid. You take the hit. Then, for the next 4 years, you try to rebuild confidence. Reeves did this in her first budget. She raised a record £40 billion. It was painful. But the market thought, okay, that's over. Now we can stabilize. But here we are, in November 2025, and she is coming back for a second grab. This is Politics 101 failure. By coming back for more money just a year later, she has destroyed what we call regime certainty. If I am an investor, and you rob me in 2024, I might forgive you if you promise it's a one-time thing. But if you come back in 2025 with a mask and a gun, I now assume you will be back in 2026, 2027, and 2028. Twice bitten, the contributors to the economy, the entrepreneurs, the investors, will now price in labor risk. They will expect more unpleasant medicine in the third and fourth budgets. Even if Reeves is fired next year, the trust is gone. This creates a permanent drag on the economy. Capital goes into hiding. Businesses hoard cash instead of investing in new machinery. The pie stops growing. And when the pie stops growing, the government fights even harder for a slice of the shrinking crumbs. So, let's wrap this up and look at the full picture. What we are seeing on Wednesday is not just a budget, it is a collision between ideology and reality. We have a chancellor armed with statistical models that say she can extract billions more from the economy without consequences. She is wrong. We have a government that believes it can target the wealthy to help the poor. The data shows that when you target the wealthy in a globalized world, they leave, and the poor lose their jobs. We have a political strategy that relies on stealth taxes and complexity, which only serves to gum up the gears of commerce and innovation. No statistical model can help when those with the greatest economic flexibility are actively disincentivized from investing. As we have noted before on this program, the failure of Reeves and Starmer to push through landmark welfare and spending reforms to actually fix the spending side of the equation, despite their massive majority in parliament, is one of the great failures of modern government. They have chosen the easy path of tax hikes over the hard path of reform. And as the Chancellor is now discovering, bad politics makes for terrible economics. The UK is a £3 trillion economy. It is resilient. But even the strongest swimmer will eventually drown if you keep adding weights to their ankles. Wednesday's budget looks like another heavy weight. If you are a young worker in the UK, tighten your belt. If you are a wealthy investor, check your passport expiration date. And if you are Rachel Reeves, maybe throw away the Excel model and look out the window. I'm Boss. This is the truth behind the economic world. See you in the next episode.